welcome to the Lowdown Mortgage Podcast, the show where we dive deep into the topics that directly impact the evolving originator. I'm your host, Connor Bartley. Bam! And joining me today is someone who learned early on that success in this business isn't about being the hero of the story, but about becoming the protagonist who helps others win. He built his team early, rebuilt it after setbacks, and now focuses on designing processes that create real client impact and real freedom. Andy Zemon, welcome to the Lowdown.
Thank you, man. It's a pleasure to be here. I'll tell you what, you could be my hype man any day. That's impressive. Like I might actually want to hang out with me after that, man. Can you do me a favor? Can you give me that recording so I can play that for my wife? She might want to hang out with me after that too. So
right.
That would be good.
Yeah, just put a little Back in Black behind it, or put some, intro music.
Man,
and there you go, man.
That's good. I'm feeling good. I'm feeling good about myself now. Man. That was fantastic.
There you go. Well, good, man. Well, I'm excited to have you on. It's great to have these conversations with people who've been through it and have figured some real things out. This industry is not easy. And so, that's the whole point of the Lowdown, right? Is to bring real producers on that have done big things and get the stories out there. And so I'm excited to kind of get that out today and visit with you. I like to just jump right in and just get right to the good stuff, right? Start asking questions. So when we've talked before, just in preparation to this episode, you mentioned that a defining moment for you is when you started telling clients what they needed to hear instead of what they wanted to hear. And I know that's a pitfall that a trap a lot of people fall into, right? What changed inside of you that made you comfortable making that shift?
Well, so I think I always knew that was right, obviously. And the hard part is that we live in a people pleasing environment. We need people to be happy, to want to move forward with us. And so there's this, I don't know if the right word is, there's this ethical tug, right? Of like, I should really tell you this, but if I tell you that, you might want to go talk to somebody that doesn't tell you that makes everything sound better. And then I'm going to not do the deal, et cetera. And, where I really realized that it was first of all, so I guess where I realized it was possible to do this was when I learned a style of selling that I'll talk about in a second. But I knew deep down I always needed to do it. It was just, there was always this fear and anxiety of, if I do that, they may not like me, or if I do that, they may not want to work with me, or if I do that, I might be, squashing or killing their dreams up front. And, and this is a problem. And so, so Connor, you and I obviously know each other because we share an interesting connection, right? I'm in Go Coaching. I coach with Amir and I coach for that organization. And so something I can remember Amir taught me a long time ago, and I've read about it in books, et cetera. But, one of the really key points that was a defining moment in my ability to then articulate what people needed to hear was when we incorporated what's called permission-based selling, and learning that trick and learning the tactic and learning the scripts and getting comfortable using that language in order to invite people to give us permission to share what it is that we needed to. At that moment, it became about guiding people. It became about being an advocate, not an adversary. And that's what I realized was the issue in the beginning was, if I have this difficult conversation and I tell them what they need to know and should know, I'm obviously helping them make great decisions. I'm helping them make the right decisions, but I'm adversarial in nature because I'm the person that's giving them information that they don't want or when they don't want to hear. But when they give me permission to give them that information, it now is received in a very different light. I'm now an advocate. I'm no longer the adversary, and it changes the dynamic of the relationship. And what I've seen with a lot of loan officers that I coach and a lot of realtors as well that may catch up on this podcast, most people never make that jump and they never make the transition. And there's really just one simplistic style of selling that you need to learn in order to do it and do it comfortably. And that's just permission-based selling. So that was really where it became very possible for me and very easy to do.
Yeah. Is there some transitional phrasing or something that just a question you ask to get that permission? Is it, I need to tell you some difficult things. Are you ready for it?
So
or how are you opening up that conversation?
That's great. So I like to ask it in the context of, hey, what type of loan officer do you want me to be? Do you want me to be the loan officer that tells you everything that you want to hear? Do you want me to be the loan officer that opens up and has a conversation with you about the things that that I see that could create problems. A lot of people don't like to know where there could be issues, but are you the type of person that is hiring me as your friend, or are you the type of person that wants to hire me as somebody that's going to keep you out of trouble? And when I put things in that context, in that way, I've never had anybody say, actually, I would like to hire you as a friend. Most everyone, or everyone for that matter, says, no, I want you to be the person that I need you to be to keep me and my family from making a bad decision. So I need you to be everything. So then it could be 3 or 4 calls later down the road, and I'll anchor them in that moment. This is another tactic, Connor. It's called anchoring. So I'll go back and I'll say, hey, Connor, do you remember that call that we had early on in our relationship here where we were just working on the pre-approval, and you gave me permission to be that loan officer that was going to share with you insights that I saw that could potentially become problematic? And they'll say, yeah. And I'll say, well, I've got a couple of those things that are on the horizon. Am I okay to have this conversation with you? And they'll say, yes, please. And then we'll lean into the conversation. And it reminds them that they gave me permission. It anchors them in this was their choice, and this is why I'm doing it. And it creates alignment for the fact that we're an advocate, again, not an adversary.
Yeah, and that ties into kind of what I mentioned in the introduction was, the transition from hero to protagonist. I think the hero mindset is I want to be liked. I want, I want to be their friend, and sort of afraid to lose that dynamic in the relationship. Whereas the protagonist, the Obi-Wan Kenobi to their Luke Skywalker, where they're now the hero and you're the guide. A little shout out to Donald Millard's story brand. It's a different dynamic. So what does it look like now to operate as that protagonist?
Well, so I mean, first, I think as a whole, this is a difficult word because we probably all read it, we'll say, in Greek mythology, right? But when we say the word, it gets tossed around and it's got some confusion around the meaning. And what it really is in that case is the protagonist is just someone that's going to, in a story, someone that's going to, without self-regard for recognition, etc., be the person that's going to help facilitate someone else's accomplishments, right? And really, that's what we do, right? But when I started this year, again, back to a conversation that I had with Amir, he asked me, he's like, hey, what's your word of the year? And I'm like, well, it's not really my word of the year. This is the word of my career, right? The word of my career is protagonist. And so what does it look like in that particular case is it looks like a selfless way to lead. And ironically enough, what I found is by taking on that role of someone else's goals of 100% importance relative to my goals. So if there's only room for 100% of goals in an objective, if I make someone else's goals 100% of my objective, then I'm selflessly leading, right? And what I have found is the second I made that change in my business exploded. And the opposite could have been keeping me from doing it, because it would have been like, man, well, I don't know if I tell them that I'm not really the right place to do this construction loan, or that there's a better option available, or that in this particular case, they're making a bad decision on the house because of X, Y, and Z, or they're doing a VA purchase and they're going to PCS in, but they're only going to be here for 2 years, and their funding fee is 3.3%, and the seller's not paying any closing costs, and the resale market is questionable on that time horizon, and maybe they need to consider renting. If I don't have that conversation, I'm not really the protagonist, right? But what I found is by having those conversations, everything became easier. And it became from a position of, I felt like I could freely say what I needed to. They gave me permission. They felt very comfortable. The client always feels very comfortable with the advice from that perspective, because there isn't a hidden agenda. And that comes across in the conversation, right? It's very authentic. And so the end result is what it looks like a really great experience. It's a lot of fun now in order to have this, because I find that it's created an opportunity for us to be on the journey together. And we're just sort of on the sidelines, kind of, making sure that we're pushing things along, right, in the right way. Almost like bowling, Connor. Like when I go bowling with my kids, because the excuse I use is I like to put up the little bumpers and the bowling gutters, right? I like to get a good score. And if I have my kids with me, I can put the gutters up, and it's like, oh, it's a pain to put them down. Like, I'll just bowl with them. But the reality is now it creates alignment where our job is really to keep the client out of the metaphorical gutter and the literal gutter.
Yeah, I love that, man. And so, just to kind of transition a little bit now, something I know that is near and dear to your heart and a mission of yours is really manufacturing more time in the day, like helping free up your time. And you mentioned something to me that I thought was real enlightening, where it's, a lot of people focus on more money, but more money is created in the time, and so they sort of miss the point. And back in the early 2000s, you started to kind of move in that direction where you started building your team and being open to more delegation. Like, what did that start to unlock for you? Because I know a lot of originators struggle with letting go.
So it came from it started because, well, I mean, really the passion project kind of came out of COVID, right? Where it was crazy. It was 18 hours a day. It was, we had loans coming out of our ears, and everybody in the mortgage industry, if they were in the mortgage industry at that point in time, everyone was making more money than they deserved, right? Than they were set up for and that they deserved. That was, it was incredible, but we were sacrificing our time for that money. Now, granted, we didn't have anything else to do. So it's like, all right, well, if we're going to be here, we'll work, right? But what happened is it redefined a lot of the barriers that had previously been created in the industry. There were no longer really for anybody nights and weekends that were just, we were bankers, we didn't work on the weekend. We were bankers, we didn't work in the evening, whatever that might be. And it was never really that elitist for me, but like there were definitely barriers and boundaries that existed that were completely torn down during COVID that were never going to be able to be rebuilt again. Well, that was super frustrating for me because I really love to travel. I love to go places, right? You can see by the paintings behind me, we're big Disney fans. My family and I like to go to Disney. And so we'll spend a day in the park or a couple days in the parks, and it's just a lot of fun. But I can't do that if I have a business that doesn't allow me to operate without being there, number one, and or number two, if it's dependent upon me. So then the principle became, well, how do we go create time? And time became important because whatever you said earlier, right? Whatever we do, whatever we create, if we create time, we can do whatever we want with it. We could travel, we can go to Disney, or we could work, and we could work on higher level activities that produce more dollars if that's what we choose. And so when I started to look at the mortgage industry as a whole was never good at creating this. In fact, it was terrible at creating this. I would say second only worse to the real estate industry, right? Where they don't create time. And so I said, well, look, if every recruiter that calls me is talking about producing more revenue for me and helping me make more money and giving me a higher basis point, or maybe there's this sign-on bonus that I don't deserve, but whatever is going to be offered anyway, and there's all this other stuff, maybe if I'm going to really be good in the mortgage industry, I don't need to be paying attention to what everybody else is talking about. And so what I set about doing was creating a business that would manufacture time for me and for my family, and allow us to travel for up to 2 weeks at a time without anybody knowing that we were gone. And what I quickly realized is that then that was powerful for us and we did it. But now the messaging became really, really, really cool to share with other loan officers because some people don't want to work 50, 60 hours a week. So, I'm very blessed. My family and I take 10, 11 weeks vacation a year, Connor. It's a blessed life. But we do it because we created the process and the systems to allow us to. So that's why and how. And so everything that we built accordingly is designed to help me and help my team and help my family. And then we realized that was transferable to other loan officers as well and other industries. And so then we started leaning into how we create some of those processes and systems.
Yeah. So this show is for evolving originators, people who are, figured out basics and they're trying to figure out growth. If I'm a, 5 to 8 unit a month loan officer, what's the first hire I should make that would free up my time?
So I believe your first hire, if you don't have one and you're sort of doing this work all yourself, you have to have what we call an LP3, loan partner 3. That's a processor that if you're just a loan officer, you're not going to hire your own processor. But this is a processor that talks to realtors, talks to clients, solves problems in the pipeline. A processor, not to truly trivialize it, but a processor by definition pushes paper backwards and forwards, right? And a loan partner 3 solves problems and also helps to create time. So if your branch doesn't have one, or if you're running a branch and there isn't one, or you're a loan officer in a broker shop, or you're an LO, okay, maybe you're not going to hire your own LP3 just to work in your branch if it's not really your branch. That's always number one. Number 2 is the loan partner 2. And the loan partner 2, by definition, is somebody that is an expert in guidelines that can duplicate your work and your effort, can start to solve problems, and actually does solve problems without you, because become someone that you can delegate some pipeline management tasks to. Does loan disclosures, can speak 80% as well as you can about aspects of the loan. And that hire is critical because you've got to offload some of that important, but really not, we'll call it dollar productive activity that a loan officer can do. So that's the first hire. The second hire, knowing, maybe this is the direction that your question goes. The second hire then is what we consider to be a loan partner one admin, somebody that can manage calendar, can manage lead intake and lead flow, scheduling, those types of things. And that position can be a person in office. That position can be, I work currently with that role where I've got, mine is remote. Mine's a virtual assistant in the Philippines. And before y'all question that, yes, I work for an FDIC bank. There is a way to do it. It's okay. And you can have it done. You just kind of have to push. But I'm going to throw this out, Connor. You can get a lot further in the mortgage space getting these little sort of nuanced exceptions done, right? Like, how do I hire a VA when you come from a position of stability, consistency, and production? So if that's something that's on the agenda, cool, go produce, go get a name in your organization, go become a valuable member of the corporate team, and then go in and there's some cool tactics you can use, but ultimately that's where it would be. That's your first and second.
Yeah, and I love that call out about increasing your value within your organization if you're gonna before you start asking for things, and I think that's really important. If you're serious about this as a career, increasing your value consistently should be high on your priority list because the more valuable you are, the more you can leverage. Now,
well listen, and
yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, you promised, you were like, I'm not going to talk over you, Andy, but I didn't make that promise. So there I am, right? So this is an industry that rewards doing the work before asking for the something, right? So I really believe this is one of these industries, maybe one of the only ones that exist where the only way you get anywhere is by actually doing it that way. You get your promotions by doing the work before you get the title. You get your opportunities for putting in the time and the effort before you really get a shot. You get these small concessions, et cetera, made at your company. They consider opportunities like a VA and creating a process for you because you've created value and you've brought value to the organization before you ask for the favor, before you ask for the exception. I think you have to come at it from a position of value. And the same thing with your realtors, with your business partners, with your clients. We have to add value before we ask for the thing. Well, what is a thing? Well, with a client, it's, I would like to do your mortgage. Well, great. I know you do. That's why you do what you do for a living. But what have you done for me? Well, nothing. I just want to do your loan. Okay. Well, there's lots of people that want to do my loan. So when you lead with value in the beginning and you constantly are adding value throughout the entire relationship and your employees as well, now you get the right to actually ask when it's time.
Yeah, I love that. That's a great call out. Now, something we talked about, and I know the Go Coaching community was reading X is easier than 2X in February. And so we kind of got on that topic when we were talking before. And I asked, how would you 10X the impact in the industry? And I loved your response. And that was to teach the industry basically to focus less on its own experience and more on the client experience. So I'm just curious, in your opinion, like what are we getting wrong right now? Where should that focus really be? What does that look?
So I think what we're getting wrong is that we're looking at this as mortgage people, mortgage professionals, originators, people that run mortgage branches, people that run mortgage companies. And we're not looking at it as people that use mortgage companies and that are physically the client of the mortgage company. Along that way, there's obviously aspects of running the business that have to be done at a corporate level, and there's cost decisions that have to be made. But we're making them, and we're not giving, in most cases, consideration to what it feels like to the consumer to then be part of that on the receiving end. And we also, Connor, aren't looking at other industries that I think do things that we do better, okay, so that we're required to do. So an example of that, this is probably 8 years ago or 9 years ago, maybe, I was struggling with calendar management. struggling with it, right? And people they were dictating the calendar times to me, and my day was getting, the tail was wagging the dog, okay, for sure. And then, I was in coaching at the time. It wasn't Go, and I was in coaching, and they're like, "Oh, do this, do your perfect work, and perfect week, and all this." I'm like, "Okay, great, I'm going to do it." And it was like 2 weeks, everything's great, and then 3 weeks, everything blows up again. And so, I mentioned this before. My wife is an accomplished orthodontist, and so I stopped for a minute and I looked at at her scheduling software and her system and how they ran multiple chairs, and I'm like, "How many people do you see a day?" And she said, "I don't know. We see like, I don't know, 100 patients a day or 120 patients a day." And I'm like, "How long does the average patient take?" And they're like, "Well, I mean, it's, like, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes or whatever. Like, you're running X chairs, right?" I forget the math that I ultimately did, but I'm like, "Okay, you're rotating people in and out. Some are bondings and some are, these things that you got to do. And they're different types of appointments." I'm like, "How do you do that? Show me your calendar. Show me your scheduling system." And I look at it. I'm like, wow, I should run my business like an orthodontic practice, and I should have chairs and then, different assistants that are coming in, and they've got their own workflow, et cetera. And I'm not where I want to be yet with it, but I set out on this passion project of like, okay, if they can do it, we can do it. And so, to the question you asked me, what we're doing wrong is we're trying to recreate solutions to our problems when other industries have already created solutions, and we're just not willing to duplicate it because we look at it and we say, "That's the auto industry, that'll never work," or that's the orthodontic industry, their dental industry, that'll never work. And we don't look at it and say, but their client is the same as our client. It's people. And so if it works for people, it probably is going to work for people. And so we just think that we know better because we're in the mortgage industry, and that's what we do. And so those are things we're missing. But, I think at the end of the day, they're simple especially at the loan officer level. I'm not talking about anything that my company did. I'm literally talking about changes that I did. And whether it was 8 or 9 years ago, I implemented Calendly before Calendly was even probably Calendly. And now everybody uses it, and that's fine. But very few people use it the way it's supposed to be used, which is as a tool. A lot of people just send out, Connor, a link that says, "Here's my calendar, click the link." How impersonal is that? That's like, "Hey, I'm an elitist. I don't have time to be bothered with this." Calendly gives you the ability to drop suggested times. They give you the ability to have a custom domain. They give you the ability to do a number of different things. And so when we send out an email, it says this: "Hey, Connor, I'd love for us to have some time scheduled in the next day or two. Here's a couple of times that I'm currently free. Here's a direct link to my calendar that'll have all times available in case anything else might work for you. And please know your time is important to me. So if there's any special considerations that you need me to look at on my calendar, just reply back and let my team and I know what they are, and we'll be happy to do whatever we can to accommodate." Now, if I received that email, I wouldn't feel put off like, "Okay, who do you think you are?" Right? Like I now feel like, wow, okay, you might be amenable to actually meeting me in the middle. And the reality is to do it anything else is potentially a turnoff, and it creates an environment where your barrier to entry is too high, and you're probably losing clients as a result.
Yeah. And what I've been hearing from you just sort of throughout this conversation is, at the heart of it, attention to detail. The scripting on asking permission and getting into that, all the nuance with the Calendly and things of that nature, really paying attention to the different roles of the team members and what are they doing. Like, all of that really boils down to attention to detail. So even in this quest for more time and speed, you can't forget the small stuff, right? A lot of times we just want to go fast, and then we go too fast and we forget all the different things that really matter. And I think there's a good call out in there too, in terms of just the experience for us or for the industry versus the consumer, which is, we're not buying a house every day, right? There's kind of becomes a little bit of a perspective fatigue where you sort of lose perspective of what it is you're actually doing or what the client is going to experience because you haven't done it in years, right? And do you feel like there's a little bit of an element of that out there?
Yeah, for sure. And just to make sure I'm clear on this, what you're referring to, like us not going through it every couple of years or every year, right?
So, a loan officer doesn't buy a house every day, right?
Yeah, I mean, we're in the process every day. So obviously, we think we know it, we think we feel it, but even when we stop and think, what did it feel like as a client? we then don't create any systems around or processes around fixing what that felt like. So every time I go buy a new property, even though our bank has the ability, we can do internal loans, et cetera, I go outside and I go to somebody I know in the industry and I go through the mortgage process with them. And I go through the mortgage process with them, not because I expect a deal. Like, I don't negotiate. I know where rates are. I don't rate shop. I'm not that guy that's like, oh my gosh, he's in the industry. What a pain in the rear. I want to experience what it feels like from the client's perspective. And I not almost always, I always find one or two things about somebody else's system that I'm like, huh, that was kind of cool, right? No matter how bad it is. I mean, there was one I went through that was like atrocious. I'm like, there's nothing good here. But that was like one of those just like call center credit unions where it was, whatever, it was what it was. But when you go through it the rest of the time and you've got somebody like you on the other side and you go through their experience, it's very cool because you usually pick one or two things up that you implement in your business. But yeah, to that point, nobody's really paying attention to it. And Connor, the other part of this 10X journey is as you're creating this, like, the 10X is literally a journey, right? Otherwise we break most of our stuff down into like, hey, this year I'm going to do this. Next year I want to do this. Okay, well, 10X is about at some point in time, I'm going to be working towards this target. I want to do, maybe for some of you, it's $100 million in production. Okay, let's use that number. So then the cool part about then implementing the calendar aspect, to go back to Calendly in this 10X journey, is it fixes a 2X problem. It's like, okay, great. Well, my calendar is now fixed. But you get to look at this and you get to say, okay, but now how does it support what we would do on this 10X journey? What's going to break at 100 million of production that doesn't break today at 15 million? And how do I create this process to support that journey better? And sometimes people don't take the step forward with a project or in a Calendly type of thing. They don't go that route. Or if they start it, somebody gives them a little bit of negative feedback and they stop because they get all in their headspace about it, right? They get all emotional, like, oh, this was a bad idea. But the reality is you ask yourself this: is that something that's still going to be needed and a problem that needs to be solved for me to 10X my business and to go from 10 million to 100 million? And if the answer is yes, then you're on the right path. You just maybe picked the wrong tool or solution, and you probably don't need to throw the whole thing away. You probably only need to tweak it 20%. You need to change your scripting. You need to change the way it works. Maybe you need to change the piece of technology, but you're on the right track. So as long as it supports the mission that you're on, it's okay to fail, but most of your failure is probably not 100%. It's probably only 20% of what you tried that didn't work. Use the 80 and then build off of that to get the rest of the 20 to actually fit.
Yeah, love that, man. Great perspective there. So I've thrown a lot of questions at you. I want to give you an opportunity here at the end of this episode to just say whatever might be on your mind. If there was a question I didn't ask or anything that you feel might be important to the audience that's, listening to this podcast today.
I mean, I think the biggest thing I have to say is that you're going to see, I mean, it sounds crazy to say because everybody's like, this is what everybody's saying, but we're going to see more change our industry is going to look completely different in the next 10 years. I mean, in the next 2 years, 5 years, there's a lot of people that are in this industry that still won't be in this industry in 2 or 3 years for sure. And I don't want that to be anybody that's watching this podcast. The reality is I believe that this is the greatest opportunity industry on the planet. And I think that the change that we're experiencing, which is this hybrid version of technology and AI and usage of all these pieces, people are going to go one of two directions. They're either going to go purely AI and it's going to be, clients working with an avatar, and there's going to be plenty of clients that are like, okay, cool, I'm good with an avatar. But there's a whole ton of other people that are going to have AI and technology fatigue that are going to need the relationship to actually run and are looking for that connection. So for those of you that are seeing this, it's a decision. Which route are you going to go? And then you have to decide, are you going to hitch your wagon or hitch your wagon to somebody's horse that's already built it, and you're going to basically flow into what we call the slipstream, and you're just going to basically be pulled right along with them, right? Or are you going to go create it? Okay, because those are your only two choices. Or are you going to become irrelevant? Right. I think that's it. And this is the greatest opportunity industry because, again, there's no cap on what we do. There's no cap on our income. There's no cap on the relationships that you can generate. There's no cap on any of this. It's phenomenal. And for us to be faced with this sort of tipping point of, okay, the industry is going to probably diverge in two different directions. And you've got the pure technology and then you've got the relationship. If you're somebody that can really lean into those relationships and then can utilize the technology piece of it, I don't think the future has ever been brighter in our business. And I've never been more excited about what it is that we're looking at. So, you know, that's what I got to say. And ultimately, if you don't know how to do any of this, and you need one anyway. I have one. You should have one, regardless of where you're at in this business. Find your mentor, find your coach, find the person that understands they're your protagonist. That can be your hero story, but you go be the protagonist for everybody else. Someone else you're looking for is your protagonist for your hero, right? But the reality is return the favor and be the same thing for someone else.
Yeah. Love that, man. Well, Andy, I want to just say thank you for being on the lowdown, sharing your story, your perspectives on this industry, and just bringing a lot of wisdom to the platform. So thanks for being here, man.
I appreciate it. Connor, thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely.